All right, what's good, Can't Believers? Welcome to another Can't Believe I Made It podcast. So we're jumping back into our series where we're having guests on, and I am so excited to have Sandy on here. Sandy, I don't know how long you've been in the Facebook group where obviously a lot of podcast collaborators, and so for our listeners out there, there's this really big podcast group that is just really trying to nurture podcast communities, people who want to be on the pod, people who want to have people on their pod. And I sent this message out, and I was so inspired by Sandy's response that I was like, okay, cool. I got to have her on. So, Sandy, welcome to the Can't Believe I Made It pod. I totally appreciate you taking the time for us today.
Thanks for having me. I'm super excited to be here. It's funny, I actually had just joined the group when I saw your post.
That was, it's perfect. I love it. I love it. So what prompted you to join the group? Because I literally had just joined probably like 3 weeks before that. So we're both brand new. Like what prompted you to join?
I'm actually in a couple of different coaching communities with different women who are entrepreneurs and also career driven women who are in corporate America. And so, one of them in particular, she's actually a doctor, medical doctor, board certified, and she's been on a number of podcasts and actually added me and told me about it. And I said, you know what, I'll check it out, give it a go. And so I'm glad that it worked out. And I've already made connections with other podcasters. It's awesome to see the group of people coming in,
Yeah, yeah,
and all the topics that come through as far as what type of guests they want to have or be a guest on
yeah.
different podcasts. Really, really interesting group of people.
What's crazy, Sandy, is like so we're this will be episode 90, and it's serendipitous, and we'll definitely get into this because it's International Women's Day on the day that we are recording, and a lot of what you're about is just that. And so I'm excited to dive into that. But we're heading into episode 90, and I'm really loving the building of communities, because when I first started this podcast, like I bought courses upon courses. Our pod family knows this. I've talked about this all the time, but I had such a tremendous amount of imposter syndrome of like, could I even start a pod? And now I'm heading into episode 90, and it's just really nice to see those communities thrive. So you're brand new to it, but what has been your experience with just podcasting?
Um, with podcasting and even hitting on what you said about communities,
Yeah,
my experience so far has really been big on the relational aspect of podcasting, because a lot
yeah,
of what I've assessed and noticed is that once you start to build rapport and build relationships among different circles and different groups, you do start to really see the commonality around like
yeah,
that common drive. A lot of people are talking about purpose these days. A lot of
yes,
people are motivated to do coaching and
yeah.
helping with training and things. So I love finding these communities and finding opportunities to engage with people
Yeah,
who have that common drive,
yeah,
to just help pour into people, serve people, and give back by way of whether it is podcasting or building different communities.
yeah, yeah. No, I absolutely love that. I mean, obviously, the last 2 years has really transformed a lot of how we all connect, and um, I've been incredibly grateful to have a platform and be able to connect with people like yourself. Where after the conversation, the hope is like, hey, I could definitely be Sandy's friend. So I'm so glad to have you on. So Sandy, I want to ask. So this podcast is about the hero's journey. This podcast is about diving into people's habits and rituals, and really, in a lot of ways, their origin story. So, I guess a good place to start is, what is creating passion in your life? What are you involved in that is just like, I love this. I wake up every single freaking day and I go do this. Like, so tell me about that.
That's a great question. So I'll take you through kind of just taking a little bit of a step back,
Hmm.
because a lot of my driving force had been there as far as what motivates and inspires me. However, it took a little bit to get to a point where I realized and pinpointed what you could say was like my why,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And at the height of the pandemic, I didn't formally introduce myself, but I am a speaker, certified health coach.
Hmm.
I've had over 15 years in the workforce as a leader,
Yeah,
in different capacities and in different forms. And this global pandemic hits, and my company gets acquired. And
Oh, no.
and Des, all jokes aside, I am like one step away from a leadership position that I wanted so bad, like so bad.
Damn
And
it.
it's like, okay, you have to start over at this point because the company's acquired. I don't know the people at the parent company, and I'm a chronic overachiever, recovering chronic overachiever.
Recovering.
We're still in recovery, right?
Yeah.
And I literally sacrificed everything for career success. When I'm talking friends, relationships, just being even healthy. I was giving up all types of focus on living a healthy life, just overdoing it all for career
Yeah, yeah.
success. And here all of this is happening. The company decides, look, we're going to acquire you. I come into this new company. I don't have a sense of any type of clarity. We're in a global pandemic.
Yeah.
Like, it's just like all roads are leading to what is going on.
What
And
is this life?
right, right. So many unknowns. And I end up on the phone with a mentor and I'm just going, like sitting at the table, crying, all of the feels, all of the emotions. Like I cried so much, I started getting a headache, even on the call. So I'm just
Yeah.
going in about like how betrayed I felt, my timelines, the company did me wrong. This is out of control. And I'm going, and he stops me. He goes, Sandy, look at your phone. I looked at my phone, 18 minutes. 18 minutes since we started the call, and I was just going. And I'm so thankful now when I look back at that because he pointed me to a scripture, and I'm a person of faith.
Yeah.
And that biblical scripture is one that says, seek first, Matthew 6:33, seek first the
Yeah.
kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be added unto you.
Mhm.
He points my attention to it, and I'm like, okay, I guess. And him and I usually close out our conversations in prayer. And so he's
Mhm.
praying for me and I'm crying. And in my heart, I'm like, I got to surrender.
Yeah.
I got to surrender because even as we're on the phone, and this is like early pandemic phase, people weren't all really doing the video thing. He hadn't known. Nobody would have known in quarantine by myself at home.
Yeah.
I already gained 30 pounds at the point of that conversation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Those 30 pounds meant that I was at risk for diabetes, high
Mhm.
blood pressure, and obese.
Yeah.
And my doctor told me this because I already knew that was my peak. So food started becoming a comfort. And as you
Mhm.
know, as a dietitian, child,
Yeah.
once you start eating crazy like that, your budget is out of whack. Your money, what budget, right? What
It's
budget?
like financial budget and then also emotional budget too. So you're
All of
absolutely right. Yeah.
all of it. And so I am on this call. We prayed it out and I surrendered. I was like, you know what, God, I surrender. I'm just going to go ahead, let it ride, figure out things. I trust you. And I also just made this declaration to myself, even if I'm in corporate America, I'm like, you know what? Corporate America's ghetto. That's all. I just started saying it. I was like, it's ghetto here.
Let's go.
It's ghetto. It's ghetto.
You guys suck. I'm out.
I was like, it's ghetto because obviously they have their goals, they have their objectives, they have their strategic milestones. None of that has to do with my health and wellness, like my personal well-being. And so today, that's why I started getting this passion around it. I said, you know what? I'm going to help career-driven women find harmony and healing in the workplace, in their homes, and in their faith.
Yeah.
Because so many of us think it's all about the hustle and the bustle and the work and just like climbing this ladder. But the
Yeah.
data is clear. We're still not making the advancements we need to make. And I'm out
Clear.
here dehydrated. Like I'm dehydrated. I'm gaining weight. Okay. My skin is
I'm not well.
I'm not well. You want me to be well, but I'm not well.
Yeah.
And a lot of that is because when goals are being set and strategies are being put in place, the people are like a piece of the puzzle, but they don't consider always the emotional aspect and
No.
the focus on their well-being. We're having the conversation now as the data shows like sitting is the new smoking,
Yeah. Yeah.
while data is coming out around people wanting companies to talk about well-being,
Yeah.
women are still not advancing at the levels they are. People of color are not advancing at the levels that they should, but we
No.
still have a hustle mentality. We still have a
Yeah.
work hard mentality. We still have a like pick yourself from the bootstrap. Like all of that is just so false because we've been doing that. So
Yeah.
clearly, while waiting for systemic changes to happen in the workplace, while waiting for them to kind of wake up and say, look, I got to change things if I want to keep my talent,
Yeah.
we need to be focused on well-being. We need to
Yeah.
be eating healthy. We need to be waking up every day, being mindful. I'm prayerful every morning. My first order of business is prayer, reading my
Yeah.
Bible. I'm like, I drink my water. And so I started telling people, look, if your name ain't Jesus, don't speak to me. I'm not, 9 a.m. I'm not speaking to anybody if your name is not Jesus.
I
Okay.
love that.
Because the more that I do that, I'm better at work.
Yeah.
I show up at work. I show up. I'm here.
Yeah.
I'm present. I can hear people. I could bring value because I spent time filling my cup. But
Yeah.
if you're depleted, if you're at zero, you can't. What is it exactly that you think you're going to bring? You can't give what you don't have.
Oh my God. All right. Sandy, you like touched on like 10 things that I want to comment on and further this conversation more. And I'm trying to wrap in my head like where I want to start. Oh my God. Okay, so first things first. You mentioned something about like the hustle culture behind what happens. And it's on the entrepreneurship side too, right? It's
Oh
like
yeah.
don't sleep, just keep going. And I'm like, what?
Right.
And
Right.
it's one of the most infuriating things. And one of the things I want to ask you about, especially as it pertains to that corporate lifestyle. I mean, you mentioned like another company came in and just completely rattled things. And I felt that being a clinician on the dietitian side, right? And it's such a frustrating thing. And a lot of what you were talking about there, and this kind of comes from my frustration too with the industry. And I wonder how you feel about it is like the level of white patriarchy that does happen and how that sort of trickles down to employees and the workforce, because it does in my eyes happen a lot. Like I have a lot of clients who are really trying to climb that ladder and they
Yeah.
don't really understand the value of exactly what you were talking about is like, hey, like in what ways are you actually filling your cup before you can go do these other things, because you're pouring from an empty cup. So Sandy, I'm wondering for you, in what ways in your life have you noticed that? And what sort of transformations have you had to make for yourself in order to go teach these other people about some of the same things?
Um, I had created a 4-step method that I still live by today,
Yeah.
right? Because in it, I talk about women achieving a steady pace. And this is
Yeah.
for everyone, a pace, right? The P is preparation and prayer for those of who do pray. But the A is acceptance and awareness. The acceptance is like current state. So many people like want to keep the noise and the fluff and not really acknowledge like, no, this isn't right. No,
Yeah.
okay, we need to call a thing and say
Please.
the company needs to make changes. We need to call a thing. The
Yeah.
leadership at the top tier, when you're talking tier one, does not represent what America looks like in a lot of organizations. You do
Yeah.
see white males
Yeah.
at the top, but yet you want to say, okay, we're inclusive. Oh, we're diverse. We are an equitable organization. I don't see that at the top. I'm really trying to be with you. Like I'm one of those people. I'm like I'm really
Yeah.
trying to support you. I just want to see it at the. I'm just trying to see where when you say okay, when you say diversity, what is it exactly that we're talking about? Like,
Oh my
I'm
God.
asking a pointed question. And we have to call a thing. And then we also have to be willing to make true change. Like, it can be very performative depending on what organizations you're in. My organization that I'm working for now as an IT manager, I have women of color at the top that have been with the organization over 30 years. So that at least, or over 15, I think is her tenure. But at least you can know that, okay, you weren't doing this because we started
Yeah.
having social unrest rise to the top as a
Yeah.
result of all the things happening in politics or things that have already been here coming to the surface.
Yeah.
And I always encourage the women that I coach to accept the current state and then build your awareness of that as well. Because if you
Hmm.
have an awareness, you need to know what your company is about and are your values aligned. And even as entrepreneurs, sometimes people will be misaligned and all over the place because they haven't really had that level of acceptance like, okay, this is not in alignment.
Yeah.
Just have
Yeah.
to do that for yourself. And community, I talk about the C being community, a commitment to community, because
Yeah.
nobody is an island. Nobody gets to great success by themselves. You need
Facts.
somebody, like I told you about my talk with my mentor. And
Yeah.
that is one of the mentors that will call me on my nonsense. Like I just lick my wounds after I speak to him.
That's the
I just
best
go out.
people.
I'm just like, I'm just gonna go lick these wounds over here. I'm over here just licking my wounds. It's okay. I'm gonna be okay. I'm gonna be okay. I was like,
Yeah.
and I talked to God about him. I'm like, God, you know, you heard what he okay. Like, but you just need that. You need people who
Yeah.
will hold you accountable, people who will challenge you. And then as you're doing these steps, you must expect the desired result. I hear
Yeah.
entrepreneurs talk about what they're doing and then have no expectation. Like, how are you telling me you're building this business, but then you have no expectation to sell? Or how are you
Yeah.
telling me that you're gonna make it in corporate America, but you don't even have a vision for what that looks like? Like, what does that even mean to make it in corporate America? What does that even
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
You have to have an expectation that you'll
Mhm.
get to where you're trying to go. Nobody plants seeds and expects something else than what they planted. It's like
Yeah.
have a mindset of I'm going to prepare, I'm going to accept and be aware of what is going on, have a firm community that is around me and supporting me, and also expect that I'll get there, expect that
Yeah.
I'll have what I put out here. And a lot of people just from even every circle that I find myself in, you see it. And I'm glad you brought out the entrepreneurship side of it because people are working themselves almost to death.
Yeah.
It's like, you're not healthy right now. You can't serve at that level. It's just not
Yeah.
sustainable. And I'm always calling people out like that. And
Yeah.
teenagers are talking about being burnt out. What you doing drinking coffee at 14?
Yeah. Yeah.
I was like, what do you mean you needed a cup of coffee, girl? Come here. Like, I'm
Hey, that I
out.
will say that's wild too. I see that all the time, like on different reels or TikToks. I'm like, what the hell? Like, I didn't have coffee till I was in college. Like, put that coffee
Right.
down. That iced coffee is not doing you no. Go eat some breakfast and go to sleep.
You sound like me. I say that all the time. I was like, I met coffee in college. That's when we
Yeah.
met. How are you meeting coffee?
Oh, oh my God, Sadie, I love the acronym. It's PACE,
Yeah,
correct?
yeah,
Oh
pace.
my gosh, because like what I hear from like that acronym is preparation, action, obviously community and accountability, but then
Mhm.
after that, like manifestation, right? And so
Yeah,
like it kind of moves you through those stages, and oh my gosh, and I like to operate in some of the same ways, and a lot of my clients, and even just as our can't believe pod family, it's trying to move them through those stages of making sure that they're caring for themselves in the process, because I feel like I don't, and I want to get your take on this. I don't know what's harder for people, is the preparation, like having that mindset of like, if I stay ready, I ain't got to get ready type of thing,
right,
right? And
right.
then also like acceptance, because even what you were talking about with your mentor, like you got to a place where you were like, I am going to try to control the controllables and I'm going to stop worrying about what I can't control. So like, Sandy, what are you finding in your work is harder for people? Is it the preparation, or is it the acceptance?
It varies, because some people, when you talk about preparation, they start to feel overwhelmed at the idea of
Yes.
all of those steps
Yeah.
that are
Yeah.
required to take to get prepared. And even trying to accept it is hard for people too. What I often say is that like start small. Like small changes, big impact.
Yes.
Small
Yes.
change, big impact. So even in the context of exercise, I always tell people, I'm just like, look, first of all, women, our bodies, we plus size. Okay. We go
Mhm.
ahead and Google it. Okay. Barbie,
Yeah.
like that's not real life.
It's not.
There's a lot of photoshopping happening.
It's not.
It's okay. I'm like, I'm always gonna be a plus size woman and I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
But you have to have the mindset of what are the small changes that I can make that will help me long term.
Yeah.
Every workout counts towards your long-term
Hmm.
longevity, right? So I even challenge people, okay, what would happen if you even wrote down you started with writing it on paper?
Yeah.
What could happen if you really started to come into every day saying, look, I'm really going to have a good day today,
Hmm.
or having a mindset of gratitude. Like every day, I kid you not, I wake up and I'm like, whew, thank you for another day. Thank
Yeah.
you for the gift of another day. This is the only March, we're recording this March 8th, 2022. This is the only March 8th, 2022 we'll ever see.
Yeah.
There won't be another.
Yeah.
Only 24 hours of today. So I'm going to do the best to make it the best day ever.
Hmm.
And if you come in with that mindset, like, I'm not guaranteed tomorrow, you can really start to prepare and say, okay, well, how am I going to maximize this day?
Yeah.
Everyone gets 24 hours in the day. It,
Hmm.
Lord willing, but there are things that are in my control. There are things that are not in my control. And a lot of people are trying to control things that are out of their control.
Yeah.
When COVID hit, that was such a harsh reality that things are out of our control. Like we
Yeah.
blinked and everybody was like, go home. People thought 2 weeks, chop 2 years later, like we're still
Hey.
in it.
Hey, I saw this the other day, Sandy. It was like March 2020 was a wild time, and it just had pictures of people washing their groceries. And I was like, dude, there was so much, like, it was so wild back then.
It's like there's so many unknowns. Like
Yeah.
nobody knows what's gonna happen next, what comes next. And so there's a saying, and I can't remember who said it, but it's like pray as if it's up to God, but work as if it's up to you.
Yeah.
Love it. Cause I'm like, look,
Yeah.
I moved through the day, like, okay, God, this all you, this all you, this all you. I
Yeah.
just like push stuff, but then I'm still working hard. But you have to also not burn out.
Yeah.
Burnout is real. And we're
Yeah.
not supposed to be everything to everybody. And so
Yeah.
many people carry that, like, oh yeah, I gotta be everything to everybody. You don't. I
Yeah.
promise you they'll figure it out.
Yeah. They will. They
I
will.
promise you they'll be okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And I say this in the best of ways. You're not that important. Just calm down.
Okay, see now look at you. Look at you. You're like, first of all, you're not that important. The way I
I
slide and delay now, I'm like, let me delay response, okay? Because quick, I'm gonna delay response and see what happens. And next thing you know, it solved itself.
yeah. Gosh. I still want to run through the acronym a little bit. But I'm also wondering from the standpoint of like mentorship and community, Sandy, like when someone is looking for that type of community, and you mentioned a little bit like someone to hold you accountable, someone to be honest with you, what sort of things should people be looking for in mentors? Because I think that's another level too, where people
Right.
tend to for especially from my point of view, people tend to trust others and where they're at. And I'm sure you've heard this before, like you're a product of the five most people you hang out with.
Yeah,
So if something's not working
that's
and
true.
you look at your social five, it's like,
Right.
right. So like what should people be looking for in a mentor or in a community? I mean, what aspects, characteristics should people have their eye out for?
I tend to encourage people to be the person that you want to have in your life. Like, you
Yeah.
want a good friend, be a good friend, right?
Yeah.
And then you have to step out of comfort in a lot of ways. Cause in my community, I always tell the ladies, I'm like, look, y'all need to slide in your sisterhood DM. Just go ahead, just slide in her DM. Just like, hey sis, slide in
I
her
love
DM.
it.
I promise you. That could be one of your best girlfriends if you just slide in her DM, like, hey girl, hey,
Yeah.
I'm just trying
Yeah.
to say hi,
Yeah.
and we're not that vulnerable sometimes because
I
you
agree.
tell yourself all these stories. But even mentors, you literally don't have to say, oh, I want you to be my mentor. All you have to do is
Yeah.
reach out. People love to share their experiences. People love to talk about themselves. You reach out
100%.
and just want to know about them. A lot of my relationships started that way. Hey, I met you on this podcast or in this group, or I saw you post about this. Let's chat. Let's,
Yeah.
and then you vet the person or look out and say, oh, we have all these things in common. But you also, like, when you talk with the five most people, get people who are not like-minded in the sense of, are they
Yeah.
at another level? Are they at a higher level and then want to actually pour into you? I've
Mhm.
rarely had anyone say no to meeting and talking and sharing.
Yeah.
Very
Same.
rare. And when you do reach out to people, they appreciate the fact that you did. They
Yeah.
tend to move with appreciation. Oh, really? You thought that about me? Thank you for reaching out. I'm so happy to talk to you. Oh, I'd love to connect with you.
Yeah.
They find time. It's the
Yeah.
craziest thing. You could tell yourself they don't have time to meet with me. In my organization, the chief officers, I stay on their calendar, but I have a little hack for that. You got to reach out to the executive assistant. You got to get good with it. Once you're good
Yeah.
with the executive assistant, you're going
You're
to get on
good.
the calendar, And I do that often. I reach out, and say, hey, how are you? What's new? And even if I don't need her to help me schedule a meeting, I get
Yeah.
on their calendar. Why? Because these are people you want to notice you as an entrepreneur. Like, you've been in the podcast game 90 episodes now.
Yeah.
Of
Yeah.
course, I'm going to be like reaching out and asking questions and hearing like, how was your experience? What do you like about it? What don't you like?
Yeah.
And that's okay, because you're always willing to serve and help in that way. But
Yeah.
we tell ourselves that people aren't available. We tell, like, what do you look like going in their time pocket and saying that they don't have time? What
Yeah.
you mean?
Yeah.
People make time for what they want to. So if I reach out. Like, just the worst they could say is no.
Exactly.
Literally.
And even then, the type of Sandy, like the type of stories that we create in our brains about like what could happen, it's astronomical. And like I'm guilty of it too. Like there are times, even just like posting the post that I had to have people on, like before I had my team and we were creating it to go like launch it, I was like, oh, man, what if like no one like responds? And I had that moment. I was like, "Oh my god, Des, shut the hell up! Get it out. Let's go."
Right. No, you're right. And that's the scariest part, is just doing it. And I
Yeah.
always tell people, do it scared. Just do it scared.
Do
Do it
I think
scared.
we
You're
just
always
found
gonna
our
be
title for the pod.
do it scared. Do it scared. Because the worst that could happen most likely won't happen.
I totally agree.
It most likely won't happen. And and you've heard that saying, you missed what, 90% all of the shot, whatever, that you don't
Yeah.
take. You're missing all these opportunities because you refuse to step out of comfort.
Yeah.
It's safe to stay in comfort, but like if you really look at, and you talk about high performers, you talk about heroes and things, those people are people who did it scared. They did it scared. Like, they were like, okay, nobody in my family has XYZ. I'm just going to go out here and that's my story. I'm first generation American. My parents were here in the 70s and 80s. Okay, first of all, technology isn't what it is now. How are you going to tell me you're going to leave your island, come here, learn the language, figure out how to buy a home, get a trade, and then, navigate all these changes? The technological, like, I mean, I laugh at my mom when she putting on her reading glasses to deal with her iPhone, but sis is handling her business. Okay.
Oh my god.
She gets it done. But that's what a lot of people don't think about. Like, look at your family. Who in your family did it scared?
Yeah.
Who in your immediate circle is doing it scared? Like, I was the only one of the few who went to college out of state. If I stayed in my local high school town, what would my life have looked like?
Yeah.
But you just have to. It's never going to be comfortable.
Never.
It's never going to be comfortable.
Oh
I ended up starting to tell people, like, look, I'm just going to go ahead and just be in this whirlwind. And as long as I'm anchored, okay, and my soul is anchored, I'm good. But it's just crazy. Everything around me is moving. It's okay. It's okay. You see that meme of the dog sitting in the fire? It's like,
it's
that's me all day, every day. I was like, it's on fire. It's okay.
This is fine.
Right, this is fine.
Oh, Sandy, I am 100% going to name the pod that, first off. Second of all, I'm going to bite it, but I'm also going to give you credit each and every time that I say it. I love that whole concept of like, do it scared. Yeah. I'm wondering, because you kind of just barely tapped into it. So, one of my like favorite things when we have a lot of these high performing people on is hearing like, there's a reason why you're dope. What's your origin story? Like, as you look back, Sandy, like you just mentioned your first generation. So like, let's tap into your origin story. Like what has made you grow, and what has made you like the dope person that we're talking to right now?
Oof, where do I start?
Hey, we got time.
I always attribute a lot of my success to just faith, obviously, and just always that being the
Yeah.
grounding force. And it's interesting because even like people I grew up with will almost like blame their parents for always being centered on faith and only
Yeah.
offering faith. But I was like, they can't give what they don't have,
Yeah.
right? if
Yeah.
if faith was all they had, if that was where they built from, and then they see your life going and going further, they automatically, and that's true too, because they instilled in you core values
Mhm.
that they knew would carry you through to a level of success and amassing whatever growth you can.
Yeah.
I always am thankful for my parents, flaws and all, right? Because people
Oh,
sometimes
yeah.
wanna act like, "Oh, well, what if this happened? What if that happened? What if" I don't do the what ifs anymore, because the reality is every step that we take has this divine order to it. There's something that was pre-written and planned. God
Yeah.
knew it all. And so I don't blame my parents for their flaws and their mistakes, because who taught them how to parent?
Yeah.
You don't get a practice run. They don't get there's no practice run.
There's no book. I've talked about this so many times. Like, how come who signed off on me being a parent and an adult? Like,
Okay, I tell you all the time, I say that. I'm like, look, much respect to parents. Okay. I'm big on the auntie vibe. And I'm always like, look, these
love
are all
it.
my nieces and nephews. Even on social media, I was like, look at my little internet niece killing it out here. Like, I'm claiming all your kids as their auntie.
Yeah.
But the reality is there's no practice run. Your
Mm-mm.
parents didn't have it all right. They did the best with what they could have.
100%.
And I'm always thankful that, yes, there were opportunities to heal, but the times are different.
Yeah.
We have way more resources now. You have way more access to people who will actually like help you navigate emotions and
Yeah.
feelings and help you understand why you're wired the way you are. But there comes a point where you have to also be willing to heal.
Yes.
And I didn't get to sit back and say, well, my parents didn't do XYZ, so I can't XYZ. Even now, my parents are like, why are you an entrepreneur? Why are you building that business? What about your full-time job and things? And I look at them like, somebody built that, right? Somebody
Yeah.
like that they
Yeah. Some
that
other what
yeah,
up? Yeah. Okay.
they had to build that for me to come on and.
Yeah.
So, but I don't blame them for it, because from where you sit, your vision is always going to be different. Your vantage point, your perspective will always be
Yeah.
different. We have way more information now. We read a lot more now. We have access to just so much information. And
Yeah.
I'm always thankful for that humble beginning, watching my parents as immigrants navigating this US landscape, getting a trade and earning enough, buying homes, and even, giving me security, giving me
Yeah.
safety, giving me love. That I always let inspire me, because even as a woman of color in technology, managing people who don't always look like me,
Mhm.
like
Yeah.
that's a big deal. These are the
It
things
is.
my parents dreamt up. They didn't
Yeah.
think that, oh yeah, when I get here, my daughter will be a manager in IT. Like, I still don't
Yeah.
know how I got here. I didn't tell you that story. I studied accounting in undergrad and grad. I don't know how I got to IT, but I'm here now.
I
Okay.
love it.
It just happened overnight or over years.
Yes.
But like non-traditional path, just a completely non-traditional path, doing things I never thought I would do, even as early as going to school out of state, or even high school, starting to work. I was 15 when I started working,
Yeah.
and that job was basically a sponsorship deal, because I got to the place my mom was actually working. And you know what? That's the story I should tell you, because I went in there after my classes, took the train into Cambridge. My mom was a nursing assistant in an assisted living. I
Okay.
walk in, the executive assistant says, bring your daughter in to be a receptionist. And this woman, who's an executive director at an assisted living, gave me an opportunity to do reception that
Yeah.
maximized my skills, because I was already kind of more organized and administratively
Yeah.
focused. But here I am, like, and then now, like years later, when who needs to clear a paper jam? It's me. I know
Yeah.
I know what you're saying. You just got all these skills for no reason. But she didn't think that's what she was doing for me, is giving
Yeah.
me like administrative skills, organization skills, people skills, right? People are coming in, seeing their loved ones. I'm helping them build out programs for the community there. And the other nugget I got from that experience is everybody in that building was making $11.44 an hour, including my mother.
Mhm.
Here I am at 15 making what my mother's making. And I was
Yeah.
like, something clicked in my mind. I'm like, dude, I'm 15 making what she's making. She's working 40 hours. If I could do this, I'm totally going to make more in 40 hours
Yeah.
a week. And not to slight anything, take anything from my mother, because if she wasn't there, I wouldn't have got the opportunity. But
Yeah.
what people also don't understand is my mother would have never told me to apply for that job.
Yeah.
Because she wouldn't have had that perspective.
No.
But that's sponsorship as well. And so I talked at the beginning of our podcast recording about, just how you have to, like, it's not all about the hustle and the work. I
Yeah.
didn't do anything for the opportunity. I was just there. So a lot of organizations, leaders have to be the ones to identify talent and sponsor talent.
Yeah.
Sponsorship looks like I'm not in the room and I'm talking about the value you bring.
Yeah.
That's how I get promoted and moved in different career opportunities and stuff. People have heard about you, but some people just like, oh, I got to talk to the chief officer. No, sometimes that's not who you need to, your peers need to know you.
Yeah.
You need to go up a level for them to know you. My bosses always know me.
Yeah.
You have to network across and you have to be in the places. We don't talk enough about that. Like, what spaces are you in to create opportunities for you? Oh, I'm shy. I'm quiet.
Yeah.
I'm not
Figure it out.
We're back to the do it scared.
Let's
I
go.
was super introverted in high school, super quiet to myself, but they didn't play that, child. They had me at that front desk and I had to talk to people every day. I couldn't do that. I had to find comfort. So
Yeah.
a lot of that is also putting myself in those scenarios and situations that make me uncomfortable, because that's the only way you grow.
Yeah.
You won't grow if you're not uncomfortable, if you're not always thinking about, okay, what spaces do I need to be in? What spaces will force growth? And, you talked about imposter syndrome and having that sometimes that happens.
Yeah.
It's not even like intentional or like the stories that you create and tell, but you have all this experience with like hearing no's and all this experience with being delayed when you should have moved forward. Like even a part of my story about being delayed in wanting to advance to the next level. So you can tell yourself those stories and you have evidence back here, but you also have to be like, you know what? I'm going to just do it. I'm just going to do it. I'm going to put myself out there. I'm going to show up and keep doing, because most people naturally tend to work hard.
Yeah.
They tend to want more. But then the opportunity doesn't always catch up with time. So how do you make sure that you put yourself in a position to still get that opportunity? And I'm always thankful that like I was that person that would go into my mom's job and I was always making like goodies and little knickknacks for people and stuff. So just being in the space, like what spaces are you in? And then who are you meeting across your organization? Even as an entrepreneur, who are you? Who's teaching you? Who are you learning from? So many people want to follow all these big name people that are, whatever, but sometimes they don't kind of start with where they started. What you see isn't a true picture of what happens behind the scenes. So who's mentoring you? Who's helping you grow to the next level? And don't be that person that tries to reach out to the person at the top in front like they're gonna just try, can you just be humble? Can we just be humble and go ahead and ask people as we go along the journey, work with people along the journey, take the steps, do it scared, commit to the growth. And the reason why the method is called PACE is because you're always going at it. You're basically running this marathon, which we heard it before, marathon, not a sprint. You're running, you're trying to build your endurance. How do you build endurance? By continuing to work at it, continuing to push through, continuing to add to it and stuff. But if you're not patient with yourself, if you're not giving yourself the space and time to do that learning and that growing, and then also like when you talk origin story, look back. What are the things that you appreciated about your upbringing? What are the things you need to heal from? Because everyone needs a level of healing. Everyone needs it so many people like, yeah, at work, the pandemic has people acting crazy. Sometimes they're acting crazy. I was like, okay, see, that's why this is why I saw
That's the pandemic right now.
I see you coming to work showing your tail like this because you didn't give yourself time to go ahead and decompress and bring it all
Yeah.
down. And so sometimes I'll grab people on the side after meetings or after engage, like, because you'll see they're like, I don't think that's really who they are.
Yeah.
Reach out, hey, what's going on? Okay, that wasn't the space for that. Okay, that
This
was
is what you don't do.
you don't do. Okay, you may owe some people an apology.
Yeah.
I'm quick. Look, I'm gonna be your auntie, even if you older than me. Come here.
Yeah.
Come on in my office. Come here. Come in the virtual office. Just need to talk
Oh, hey,
back there.
that's why you're a mentor, right? So like you gotta just connect with those people. Um, Sandy, I really loved what you had said. First off, just with parents, really acknowledging. Of course, we all have a level of healing that we are all doing. But really acknowledging and coming from a space of gratitude with, and I've said this many times with our pod family before. Your parents did the best that they could with what they had, uh, good, bad, or indifferent, right? And the beautiful thing about that is maybe you didn't have control over how it panned out, but you do now have control about how you go through your healing process. And so, Sandy, I'm wondering for you, this podcast is also about habits and rituals, and you've kind of touched on that prayerful time for yourself. I mean, what habits and rituals have gotten you through the thickest of life, and then also times of celebration? Like what sort of things are you doing on a day-to-day or week-to-week basis? You're like, this is it.
Yes. Yes. Definitely day to day. I call it first things first in the morning when I do actually
I
start
love that.
because
I
I
love
joke
that.
around about like if your name ain't Jesus, I'm not talking to you. But I do I do really hold to a lot of that because in the morning is usually like my peak, like my zone of genius, if you will, where it's like,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah,
I'm focused, I'm my best. So every morning I do start with some level of exercise. So at least 30, 45 minutes. And then I tend to say if the sun is out, so am I. So I'm outside taking a walk. It
same.
doesn't matter. Especially living in New England, it's cold, it's snowing and stuff. But sometimes bundle up and get outside.
Yeah, yeah.
You need to get outside. Like in
Yeah.
the house, everything is coming in. It's crazy in
You
here.
have a
Look,
jacket, right? Go.
bundle up and go outside.
Yeah,
And then just being prayerful. The Bible that I read is like a chronological Bible, so I love being able to fall on different historical events and
yeah,
understand
yeah,
like, oh, what was going on there, and kind of like process it and think about it. So much application just for life in general, especially when you go historic over what was happening in the Old Testament and things like all
yeah,
of
yeah,
that tends to inform how I move through the world and the lens I see the world. And then I also think about like, okay, I need to be sure that I plan like what am I really going to try to eat today? What am I drinking enough water? Like just the physical aspect of eating healthier and just journaling as well. So all of those is a combination of just the mental, the spiritual, the emotional. I try to check in with myself like what am I feeling? What is going on?
yeah.
And then I do like to use the morning half to kind of pour in. So sometimes I'm reading different books, sometimes I'm listening to podcasts. I caught your podcast this morning. Okay.
Hey.
Shout out. Okay, shout
Let's go.
to the podcast. But I do try to take in, good things to kind of start and set the tone for the day, every single day. And then I do keep a practice of trying to really be good about slowing down because
Yeah,
often people, especially in the career space, you'll find, oh, I got to go on vacation to relax. It's not really realistic. Like if you're waiting
yeah,
every couple months, maybe to unplug, it's just not sustainable. So
yeah,
getting enough sleep at night is a huge deal. So I'm usually at about 7 hours. It's a great night if I could get more, but seven
yeah,
hours at least. I like fight for that seven.
yeah,
But 7 hours of sleep, like I talked about hydration and exercise and eating well, and then making sure that I have time throughout the month that I spend with people I love and care about. So like
yeah,
usually Sunday afternoons, try to spend time with my family. My church family is amazing. So we spend every Sunday together. And then throughout the week at different points, we check in with each other. We do activities together. So just finding time, because as busy as we are and in the hustle and bustle, if you're not filling your cup with like good time with like good people,
Yeah.
we always talk about the toxic, keeping toxic people out, but who are the people in your life, those that are pouring into you and you pour
Yeah.
into them, and it's just mutually beneficial for the two of you to
Yeah.
really feel good. So every month, like, I look to make sure I have stuff on the calendar that are like really, okay, I'm gonna have dinner with this person, I'm gonna call this person,
I
I'm
love
gonna,
that.
spend time. And if I get a trip in, awesome. If I know there's a trip out there, great. But if there's no
Yeah.
time for the trip, like, who are you building relationships with? And even in my corporate work, every week I do have one-on-ones on my calendar with people who are at different levels, all career levels, because we're in a hybrid workforce now, mostly
Yeah.
remote. So people need that touch point, and you don't get it anymore. Walking to the cafeteria, or walking to get coffee. Like, we used to have all these ad hoc meetings. If
Yeah.
there's no intentionality around how you're engaging with your colleagues, work will be horrible.
Yeah.
Like, it will be
Yeah. No, I'm with
serious.
you.
So you have to be making time for that. And even that as a parent, as a husband, like, you have to have
Yeah.
time not only with the family that is good quality time, but you got to get with the boys too and hang out.
Yeah. Like, get me out of this house right now.
You got to get the squad. Hey, we outside.
Yeah. I love that. We literally just went to a basketball game this past weekend, so that was nice to get out.
Yeah, yeah.
Sandy, I love. I keep going back to do it scared. I keep going back to this pace method, and it sounds like you're living what you're teaching, which is really empowering to hear that on the other side. So 100%. I appreciate you sharing that. I never try to like stage questions with this pod, but towards the end, I like to ask some like questions that I've asked all of our guests, and I really really love the answers. So obviously, this is the Can't Believe I Made It podcast. So my question for you is: do you believe that you have made it? And if not, what does making it look like for you in your season of life right now?
Oh, that is a good question. I don't believe I've made it. I don't believe I've made it, because I move through life with that gratitude and the thankfulness for each day. I feel like if I'm still living in this life, I haven't made it. There's still work to do. There's
Yeah.
still work to do. Okay,
Yeah.
because making it is being on the other side, like, hearing God say, "Well done, my good and faithful
Good and
servant,"
faithful
and
servant.
turn
Yeah.
in. That's it. That is really the ultimate goal, and saying that I made it. So while I'm here, really, really focus on loving God, loving people, and proving it throughout life. I've heard that somewhere, and I love that as like a way to move through life,
Yeah.
because everyone's dealing with something. There's so
Yes.
much chaos in the world. The last thing I want to do is be a person that brings that to your life. Like, I'd
Yeah.
rather just either keep space and distance, but no one needs additional stressors. No one needs
Yeah.
additional heartache and pain. I'm quick to apologize, just,
Yeah.
because there's enough out here to invoke different emotion. I'd
Yeah.
hate to be a person that invokes that.
Yeah. I I love that. I love that. All right, last two questions for you, and we'll get you out of here. I appreciate you taking the time. All right.
It's been a
Uh,
pleasure. It's been awesome.
I
This is
this is great. This is
great.
great. I want to talk to you a little bit after the pod, so don't leave after we get done here because I just want to connect a little bit because you're awesome. Okay. So first of the second of last questions here. So obviously this pod is also about the hero's journey. So I want to know from you, like, and so different people have answered this in different ways. Some people have taken the hero comparison and said, I'm this superhero because of this. Or other people have said, my hero is someone in my life. So who is your hero comparison and why?
Oh, who is my hero comparison and why? You know what? I would say my hero comparison is definitely my old business school professor.
Okay.
So Dennis Kimbrough, you've read his
Okay.
book probably. Um, Think and Grow Rich, Black choice.
Yeah.
He I think meeting him as a freshman at Clark Atlanta University, and then I had asked him for to help me find work study and
Yeah.
show up sophomore year, and he's like, "Oh yeah, you're my teacher's assistant." Oh, great. Okay, that's
Cool.
I'm gonna die because you're
Yeah.
standing in front of all of these students that he's teaching.
Yeah.
But the way he patterned his life for us as students, like even today, like I still remember him. And I was a teacher, I was his teacher's assistant for maybe 4 or 5 years. He would say, "Ladies, your last name is Kimbrough. You're my daughter. Don't let none of these foolish boys." He was just like that
Yeah.
energy and passion. And he was just always just such a great example of like building, always building and working hard,
Yeah.
and just encouraging people along the way. Like he even was transparent about just the university teaching being more of a passion thing. It wasn't about it being a stream of income. Such an encouragement to be around someone like that and see how he patterned his
Yeah.
life. And he was a person of faith as well. And I think that's always the key denominator is a lot of the people that I aspire to tend to have that central focus on aligning themselves with how Jesus lived his life and what he required of people and what God says about us and requires
Yeah.
of us. And that just so inspirational. Even now, watching him online and stuff. I'm like, look at you.
Yeah. I love that. So we'll make sure that we put that in the show notes too, because I want people to get that same value. Okay, Sandy, last question for you, and I'll let you go. Uh, where can people find you? What sort of projects do you have going that we can support you with? All that stuff.
People can find me on social media, all places as Sandy Pharaon. I tend to play most on Instagram. So I'm usually on Instagram, same thing, Sandy Pharaon. But I have a Facebook community called Abundant Wellness Community with Sandy Pharaon. Same spelling for the last name.
Okay.
And in that community, we've really just been focused on like monthly challenges, providing resources for healthy living, what it looks like to kind of start to follow the PACE method and applying that to your
Yeah.
life. And even I tell the ladies, like, do not feel like you have to check in here because I know there's so much noise and things. I'm like, grab a screenshot of the monthly challenge, do it,
Yeah.
DM me,
Yeah.
let me know how things are going, let me know what you need, how can I support you? And so a lot of it is focused on building that mental fortitude and that personal commitment to health and wellness, especially as there's everything pulling at us at every angle. But I've heard it said, and I firmly believe it: if everything's a priority, nothing's a priority.
Not. Oh God.
So definitely,
Yes.
if everything's a priority, you have no
Yes.
priorities, none, not even one.
Yes.
So definitely Facebook, and then Instagram would be best to engage with me.
Oh, I love it. All right. So Sandy, don't go anywhere when we're ending here because I want to connect a little bit. So for our pod listeners out there were so many damn great quotables. So you already kind of know my thing by now. If something really spoke to you, screenshot it, give Sandy a big shout out. Do it scared, the PACE method. They're just I'm gonna re-listen to this and just come up with so many things, Sandy. So Sandy, thank you so much for taking some time with us. You are amazing. I really loved our conversation. We'll go ahead and connect here when we're done. But to our pod listeners out there, let's make sure that we give her a big follow and just continue to congratulate her on her success. But Sandy, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for this platform. Really, really great.
Absolutely. All right, pod. I will see you on the next one, Mentorship Monday. Let's go.